The problem is buying as a consumer and buying as a retailer are two completely different things. But initially, almost all people start out doing it as if it's the same thing. And at some point, they realize, oh, just because I like it doesn't mean that my customers will like it. Or just because I don't like it doesn't mean that my customers will like it.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how.
Well, friends, this is a special treat today. And it is a special treat today because Gwen is fresh off of speaking engagement and appearance at H&H Americas, which is a international conference, I believe. And in fact, I'm going to let Gwen explain it because she explains it better than me because she was there. I was not. And what we're going to be doing is over the next 4 episodes, we are going to be talking about what independent retailers are really struggling with right now, based on hundreds of conversations that Gwen has had, many of which were at H&H Americas. So Gwen, set the stage for us. Tell us a little bit about H&H Americas, and then we'll get into today's topic, which is about inventory.
So H&H is a trade show. So it's a place where people are going to find what they want to buy wholesale to stock at their shop retail. And it also includes lots of makers. And because H&H is focused around the craft industry, particularly things that are associated with string or thread or yarn. So fabric, sewing, quilting, knitting, crochet, all of those kinds of crafts. So even though it is truly a trade show, it also has other elements. So there were makers there that are focused on doing all of the cons and all of those amazing outfits people wear to, the sci-fi con, the gaming con,
So cosplay is what we're talking about. Yeah.
All of the cosplay stuff, and not just in any one particular niche, right? Like all of the various cosplay. So there was a whole cosplay fashion show as well, which was really interesting. There was also some of the work is really done as art. And so there were some gallery type things that were there as well that you could wander through and look through and see retrospectives of various creators that have done various amounts of artwork. But the general focus is for folks looking to discover new product that they want to bring into their shop. And so this one, like I said, is focused specifically on what I call string-based craft. So anything that's starting with a thread, a string, a yarn, something that's string-like, and using that. But there's all sorts of trade shows like this. There's, trade shows for the clothing industry. There's trade shows for the pet industry. Anybody that's selling something to somebody else, there's a trade show for. And although this episode, we're going to be talking about inventory, I want those of you who are like, oh, well, I don't do retail, so I don't need to know. We're going to have other topics as well that are going to really apply to you, because we're talking about employees. We're talking about all of this thing. And what my experience has been is that when you start understanding somebody else's industry, it gives you insights into your own, even if you don't think that they apply exactly.
That is true. That is true. Well, and the reason that I think it's important to talk about your experience at H&H. So first of all, I think that, it is rare to hear from a speaker at a trade show on their observations versus just like, hey, let me just regurgitate what I taught. And so you'll hire me, right? Because we're genuinely going to be talking about the various observations you have made at the show and also in the conversations you've had since the show. Now, I do know, because I have been to the website, that there were several tracks, and you taught business classes on the brick and mortar track. Well, you taught a workshop on the brick and mortar track for their pre-event, and then you also taught business classes. And one of the classes, I think it is, since I've been working with you, it is the most popular workshop that I've ever seen you give. It is the one that we get the most feedback on, which is your Open to Buy workshop. And the Open to Buy workshop is really about inventory.
Yes.
So I want you to answer, like, why is it that inventory feels so complicated for retailers? I mean, like, uninitiated over here, right? Let's pretend before I started working with you, it's like, if you own a shop, you have to have retail, right? Or you have to have inventory. You have to have something to sell. So it feels like inventory should be very, very simple. Why is it complicated enough that people at varying stages of their business would even go to a workshop about it?
Well, the first thing is most independent retailers, regardless of what industry they're in, are in it because they have a passion for the thing, right? So there is no one that owns a pet store that hates animals.
Right.
I mean,
Fair.
right? And there's no one that owns a nursery that doesn't like plants. So part of the reason they're usually into independent retail, like 99.9% of the time, is because they love the thing that they're selling, and they're excited about it, and they want to share that excitement and help other people be excited about it and use the thing well and support, whatever those pieces are. And what that means is they also probably, before they had their business, were a really good consumer of those things.
Mm.
Right? They bought lots of plants. They bought lots of things for their pet. They've bought lots of fabric. They've bought lots of they've done all of these things. And the problem is, buying as a consumer and buying as a retailer are two completely different things. But initially, almost all people start out doing it as if it's the same thing. And at some point they realize, oh, just because I like it doesn't mean that my customers will like it, or just because I don't like it doesn't mean that my customers will like it. And so all of a sudden they realize that inventory isn't just I buy something, I sell something because I like it, they're going to buy it. There actually has to be a strategic plan around it. And for many, what they've realized is they have bought a lot of stuff that is not selling.
Mm.
And that's money wasted. Because the way I describe it is inventory, when you buy something wholesale, what you're basically doing is putting $1 on the shelf and asking someone else to come in and pay $2 for that dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so if you've got inventory sitting, not selling, that's just money that's just sitting there. It's not becoming more money. It's not money in your pocket. It's not paying for your employees. It's not paying the rent. It's not doing any of those things. And typically, inventory is a huge dollar amount of what the overall business investment is. Most of the initial business investment is around inventory. So if that inventory isn't creating money in some way, it becomes really problematic. And it takes usually a bit, but usually not too far in. Usually somewhere about year 1 to 3, somewhere in there, it starts to become really painful. And that's when retailers really start saying, I obviously don't understand what I need to be doing for inventory. And now what they're looking for is a system, not just a gut instinct of, oh, that's cute, I'm going to buy that.
Yeah, because I've been involved in your business long enough to know that, you have told me several times that a lot of the issue with inventory, most retailers have way too much inventory,
Way too much.
and a lot of times it comes from challenges with decision making.
Mhm.
Now, I feel like, and I don't know a ton of retailers, but I know a few. My experience, it's like, okay, so I think that they buy based on what they've sold in the past, right? So they're reordering what's sold.
Yep.
They build relationships with their vendors, and so they trust their vendors. If their vendor says, hey, your competitor down the way is stocking this, then they feel like they have to stock it. Or your competitor down the way refuses to stock this, and therefore they feel like they have to stock that because then that's a differentiating factor.
Right.
I think especially in the craft industry, they buy what they personally like. Like if they don't like a yarn, they don't like how a yarn performs, then they're not going to stock it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in some businesses, like I'm thinking like jewelry or even to your point of pet store, just because they won't feed it to their animal doesn't mean that they don't know that other animal owners don't want to feed that. And what feels like a sure thing. Like there are certain things that I actually think that there's a lot of retail owners who feel a security around having a ton of inventory, because even though you say it's not money, to them, it feels like a savings account that they can cash in anytime. I'm just telling you what, like, my impression of people. And I'm not saying it's right, but I do think there's a percentage of people who think as long as my shelves are stocked, I can get a cash injection anytime I want because all I have to do is put it on sale.
Well, and that is true. They can put it on sale, which is one of those things of, hey, Tonya, if I give you $1, will you give me 80 cents for it? What's your
Yes,
answer,
Gwen.
Tonya?
Yes, Gwen. I would love to take your dollar for 80 cents.
And that's what happens when we start putting it on sale.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, yes, but no. And this is where a lot of times folks really struggle, is they don't understand what that math actually is.
Okay.
And so that's really why the whole concept of open to buy, which is a way to manage making decisions, making you have to make hard choices, that you can't just do everything that you want, because it gives some constraint. And it gives constraint based on what's actually happening in your business, as opposed to what you think should happen to your business based on what happened last month or what happened last year, or, any of those things, which is, crystal ball-y. It may not be like a completely clouded crystal ball. You may have some data around that. But when anyone says, well, I'm based on projections, it was like, and how well did your budget do in April of 2020?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because things do happen that we don't have control over. And so it really is, I think, all of the things that you said, that, and more than anything, it's about learning how to make decisions that are decisions based on data and not just gut. Not that I don't want you to make some decisions on gut, because I do want you to make some decisions on gut, but it's a combination of both, instead of it just being like, oh, that's pretty, I think I'll buy that.
So why is that important? Because, I mean, if it's pretty, then won't my customers think it's pretty? Doesn't like attract like?
Possibly, so long as the people who are walking in the shop also feel the same way about things that you do. For instance, I love lime green. Lime green is one of my favorite colors. I do really well in it. I happen to look really good in lime green. I know it's not actually a favorite for everybody. Would I buy lime green? Yeah, I probably would, but I would buy lime green with the expectation that it probably won't sell and I'll end up buying it for myself, which is a different thought than, oh, this is such a great color, lime green. Everybody's going to want it, right? Just because I like it, right? Now, by the same token, I'm not a really big fan of blue, but I happen to know people like blue. Blue's a popular color. So blue would be one that I would typically not buy, but I know I need to buy. Back to, I'm understanding who my customer is and what their buying habits are. And so that's part of this piece of really understanding who are your customers, who's coming in the door, because honestly, there's only one you.
Yeah.
And so you can't buy just for you. You got to think broader about who that is. And when you're first starting out, it's really hard to know who that is. So when you first start out, there is a little bit of spaghetti throwing that goes. initially. You usually have, some direction, but there's usually a little bit of spaghetti. But part of it is to start watching it and seeing what goes with it. So over time, that's really what you're wanting to look at, because what people think of, like you said, they often think of like, oh, well, this is valuable. It's on the shelf. But the problem is your cash flowing through the process. Because just because it's on the shelf doesn't mean it's actually valuable. It only becomes valuable when someone takes it off the shelf and takes it home.
Right. And to your earlier point, inventory is a cash flow issue because a dollar sitting on the shelf is a dollar that can't be spent on payroll, can't be spent to fix the ceiling leak, can't be spent to take out an ad in next week's newspaper. I mean, it really is, it's a dollar tied up until somebody says, oh my gosh, that thing is so amazing. Let me give you $2 for it.
Exactly. And so that's why choosing and limiting the amount of inventory is useful. So one of the things that happens with folks is they believe, and part of it is the retailer and entrepreneurial mindset, because people think, well, everyone thinks like I do, which of course is never true. Doesn't matter how you think. But they're good at making choices out of lots of choices. I see all of these things and I know what I want to choose. Most people aren't good at that. So one of the things that I will talk about with retailers when I'm working with them, particularly when we're working about inventory, is what is your core product? And then what are the things that supplement the core product? And when someone says, oh, and I want to bring in this thing, and it's like, yeah, but that's almost exactly like your core product. Why are you bringing that in? Well, I want people to have choices. No, you don't. Most people do not actually want choices. They want to know what the thing is to choose. So, going back to pet stores and food, right? If you go to one of the big, super big box stores, which is not what we're talking about, there are literally aisles and aisles and aisles and aisles and aisles of choices.
Right.
For cats, for dogs, for all of the things. I don't want those choices at all. Mm-hmm. That is super frustrating for me, even though I can make choices. What's really frustrating is that I have to go through all the aisles because they move things around to find the one bag of dog food that I actually want, because I'm not checking out 13 different types of dog food.
Right.
I'm only going to look for a different dog food when this dog food is no longer working for my dog. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason. Right. She's no longer a puppy. She's now an adult. She's no longer an adult. She's now a senior. She's, her stomach's upset. This dog food doesn't work. We find out she's allergic to chicken. No more chicken. I mean, whatever the thing is, I'm only going to make a different choice when I need to make a different choice. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things about inventory is we think more choices are better for our client, for our customer. Mm-hmm. And it's not. Most of us really want to have a choice, but 2 is a choice. 3 is the maximum most people can handle to choose from. And so, if you're talking about independent retail, they're going to bring in a dog food, maybe one other brand, possibly a third. But if they start bringing in 4, 5, 6, 7 different brands, it's going to be hard for them to sell that dog food. Mm-hmm. Because it's too many choices.
Right. I mean, I think about, I've never been a big pet store shopper until we rescued a kitten that was really, really sick a year ago. And I live by an independent pet store. And so I went in there because I was like, I've never had a kitten this young. What do I do? And, the person spent 5-10 minutes, asked me a few questions and said, you could probably go with one of these 2 brands. They carry 3 brands of cat food there. But you could probably go with one of these 2 brands, given the information you've told me and the age of the kitten, and then it was followed up by, this is what I feed my cat. This is what the owner feeds their cat. So, we can tell you a lot about them. And I was like, okay, sold, right? Very easy because I didn't know anything.
Right.
sold. And then, of course, they brought me some samples from the back, which I thought was very kind, totally unexpected. And we went out. And now I buy that brand all the time. And since, I work with you, I have noticed, right, there is signage everywhere that is like, we feed and we sell this brand. And then there's actually another brand they carry that is more expensive. And every now and then that one will go on sale and, I might pick it up. And they'll say, if we're ever out of this brand, totally, that's a great substitute. They never talk to me about the third brand.
See?
I couldn't tell you if that third brand is understocked or not. I couldn't tell you if the shelf is ever empty. I know the shelf is empty often with the brand that I buy, but couldn't tell you anything about that third brand. They never talk about it. It's always like brand A and brand B.
Right. See, so that's an example where that third brand is probably a waste of inventory dollar.
Well, my guess is it's either a waste of inventory dollar or highly specialized market and they only buy what they move. Because I would know if that brand went on sale because I shop sales, Gwen.
I know you do.
But it's like, or like you said, it's a waste of space. Something that you have said in the past that I think is important to bring up is inventory management advice. Now, I'm going to be honest, Gwen. I'm going to be honest. It's going to sound a little rude to our listeners, but you know me well enough to know that I mean it in kindness. I have looked at your slides. I know the topics that you teach. I have always been shocked at how popular and literally mind-blowing the Open to Buy workshop is to attendees, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there talking about inventory and inventory management. I don't feel like this is a new topic. Quite honestly, I don't feel like it's a rocket science sort of thing. Like you don't even have to carry the one, I think, when you're doing the math part of it. But yet, I mean, genuinely, like I've read the letters. Like I remember 2 years ago, a woman sent a handwritten letter from her child based on the workshop. Like this is how much it moves people, which makes me think that though there is a lot of information out there, it must be missing the mark.
So there's two things. One is most of the information out there is based on big retail.
Like big retail, like chains, like Walmart or like Tractor Supply?
Yes, and Macy's and Nordstrom's and the big box stores and, all of those things. Because obviously that's where most of the consultants and most of the people who are focused on that live, because there are literally millions and millions and millions of dollars that are going into those inventory environments, right? Tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that are going in. And so extrapolating that to an independent retailer who has one, maybe two, possibly three shops in a region just doesn't apply, right? So the first thing is the information that they're getting is based on not valuable information, because Tractor Supply has a completely different buying model than you as an individual has. And so that's the first thing, right? They have completely different.
So to quote our friend Nick Peterson, right? It's accurate, but it's not useful.
It's accurate,
not useful.
Yes. And it's not useful to this environment. The other reason that I know that I get so many responses is because I talk about it in a way that people actually understand.
Yeah.
I don't talk about it like accountants talk about it. And I also explain why it actually matters that you pay attention to this. Because a lot of people just think, well, of course I have to have inventory because I'm selling something. So I have inventory, so I sell it. Like it's just kind of a matter of fact of business. And of course I have it. And I don't really have to think about it because it's just the nature of doing business. And it's like, no, that's not actually true. You do need to think about it. It's actually the core to your business, and treating it like a default means you're probably losing a ton of money in a place that is probably one of your biggest money sinkholes within your overall business. I mean, it doesn't show up. And part of the problem also is inventory doesn't show up on the income statement, on the profit and loss statement. Inventory sits on the balance sheet, and most people get focused on how much they sell and what their expenses are. And the big expenses typically are rent and people. Those are your two biggest expenses typically when you're running a retail business. But a big amount of cash actually is going to inventory, which doesn't show up on the P&L. And so if you're not looking at the balance sheet and understanding what that means and what's happening with all of the things, that becomes really, really problematic. And that's why most cash flow issues for retail businesses, a large percentage of it is actually their inventory management, not their expense management.
What does that mean?
So it's back to they've got too much money sitting on the shelves versus what they can afford to have sitting on the shelves based on what their actual sales are. And there's a whole, there's a whole formula, which is part of what I, teach in the class. And one of the things that I point out in class all the time is the information is actually fairly simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah, so that is something, and I'd love for you to give us like a simple, like one sentence explanation of what open to buy actually solves. And while you think of that, because I know that's hard, I want to say that that is the thing that I have seen people appreciate most, is that you are somebody who says, though it is simple, because I'm not, you look at those slides and you work out the mathematical formula, and I'm sure there are people who sit there going, gosh, I must be an idiot that I've never realized this before. And then one of the things that people will say is that you validate the fact that they haven't realized it before, right? By telling them. If you've worked with consultants who've worked with Macy's, they're not going to tell you this because Macy's has a different problem that they're solving than you do. If they've worked with any large chain retailer, the site-by-site location doesn't have as much control over inventory. So they're not going to talk to you about these things. But also you make it really accessible because you let them know, like, this isn't something you can fix overnight. I think I saw an email exchange at one point where you were like, you're probably going to make like a 4% adjustment per year. It may have been per quarter, but it's like, you're not going to go from 0 to 40% in a month. Right? It's going to be incremental quarter by quarter, year by year adjustment as you work to sell down where you're overstocked and figure out what the fast movers are.
Yeah, because
so tell us the problem that Open to Buy really solves and then take it from there.
What Open to Buy really solves is making sure that you are not investing more in inventory than your business will support.
So then you're selling.
Yeah, than what you're selling. And I say business will support because it is based on how much you're selling. It's not how much it takes to fill the space.
Ew. But it's so pretty when the space is full, Gwen.
It is pretty. And one of the first things that I deal with almost every client that it comes across is, we're doing really well. We want to get a bigger space. Well, I actually want to look at how consistently they're turning their inventory. And what that means is that the inventory is landing on the shelf and getting sold. Okay. And we look at it as a total number. Okay. Not specific, pen by pen, but but a total value. So we have money that sits on the shelf that's inventory value. How often is that total value being sold to customers, walking out the door, gone, hopefully to never be seen again?
What's the goal? I mean, is there a goal number for that?
There is for independent retail. The kind of minimum healthy business is what we call 2 turns, so that we're replacing our full value of our inventory twice a year.
Oh, okay. That's not as often as I would have thought. I would have thought you were going to say like every month. You should be turning it over every month.
Yeah, and the max and where we say what's ready to expand is when we get to about 3.5 to 4 turns, because what's happening then is that you're probably paying more in shipping than you should. You should have more available because you're having to restock too fast. Now, what will happen is, the purple pen is super, super popular. And so you may actually replace it 6 times in a year. Okay. But the weird, remote hardly ever sells. And so it may only sell once every 18 months. Okay.
Okay.
So we're averaging it all together. So we're not looking at, item by item by item by item. We're looking at it as a whole, right? And so that's part of this simple math is, like I said, it's fairly simple. It's arithmetic. It's not overly complicated. But most people don't like the number that they come up with because what they realize is that they usually have a lot more inventory than their business supports. And it's like, well, but if I have more inventory, I'll sell more. Nope, that is not actually the way that it works. Back to, 3 choices of cat food. All you ever hear them talk about are 2, right? It's more inventory doesn't actually create more sales. More sales will demand more inventory. But most people that are in the business think more inventory will create more sales, and it doesn't work that way at all.
Okay. So that tells me why more inventory doesn't fix a sales problem. Because that is
Right.
something that I've heard, right? It's like if you don't, I had like a short run in retail, very short run. I'm not built for retail. If I ever want to buy a retail business, just remind me, Gwen, that I said I'm not built for retail. It wasn't back to school is what did me in. Okay. I was like, if I can't manage back to school, I definitely can't survive Black Friday.
Right.
But, one of the things is like if you don't have it to sell, they'll buy it someplace else and you may never get them back. So that was always kind of a thing I heard in terms of why you need to have, 16 of everything versus 16 of 2 things and 3 of everything else. So why does more inventory, you're saying more inventory doesn't fix a sales problem because having more doesn't guarantee you'll sell it, where selling more inventory is more of a guarantee.
And what that is, it's not about having more inventory, it's about having the right inventory. And so back to having 16 choices actually doesn't give you a better chance of selling it. Having 2 or 3 within a category is more likely to sell it.
Okay. So what we have talked about, right, is we've talked about why inventory feels complicated, right? Part of it is people are getting a lot of advice for the wrong type of business. Even if it's for the same business model, it's the wrong type of retail business. The importance of making strategic, data-driven decisions and separating yourself as a consumer from yourself as a business owner. I thought that was a really good point. Talked about why inventory is a cash flow issue, right? Because dollars that are invested on the shelf can't be used for other things. And you gave us some great insight on open to buy as a decision-making framework. It's kind of solving that one problem that actually solves a whole bunch of problems.
Well, and let me say this about open to buy, because we didn't really truly define open to buy.
Okay.
It's a term that big retail uses all the time. But what it basically says is, I have this many dollars that I am allowed to spend on inventory.
So it's actually your inventory budget.
It's technically your budget, but I don't like budget because budget is always saying you should be able to spend this much.
Right.
This is actually the money I have to spend, not the money that I should have to spend, but the money I actually have to spend.
So then I want to make sure I'm getting this right. Open to buy is actually an account. Maybe it's on a line on a spreadsheet. Maybe it's on its own business account, but it's an account with money in it. And the amount of money in that account is the amount of money you have available to spend on inventory.
Right. To replace inventory that has already sold.
So that you're not increasing the amount of dollars on the shelf.
Exactly. And if you are, we have a way to do that to allow to spend a little bit more so that you're growing your inventory at an appropriate pace or shrinking your inventory at an appropriate pace. So that although we we sold $1 worth of inventory, we're not actually going to replace it with $1. We're only going to replace it with 90 cents of inventory because we need to make our inventory a little bit smaller over time. Because what most people will say is, oh, just put everything on sale. Well, that actually just creates a completely different cash flow problem. And and that math takes a little bit longer to explain than what we have time for right now. But
okay, so kind of just to tie us up with a little bow, can you succinctly answer the question of the episode, which is, if everybody knows they have an inventory problem, why can't they fix it by themselves?
Because most of them do not have good information on what they actually need to do for their business. And they don't have a tool that is simple enough that they can maintain it over time. They're using tactics and techniques and sometimes tools that are applied to retail, but to big retail, which doesn't apply here. They're doing the Black Friday sale because, Best Buy does the Black Friday sale. I don't actually support Black Friday sales for independent retail. And if you do, it's very, very limited. I mean, like there's a lot of things that don't make sense for independent retail that are seen all the time when you're looking at big retail.
Mm-hmm.
And we're assuming that because it works for them, it should work for us.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. And that's why a lot of independent retail fails, because they're applying a big retail model to their small retail business.
Yeah. Okay, Gwen. So this is the part of the episode where I tell people where to go next. I'm just going to be blunt and honest. I got nothing for you here. So if you have questions on this topic, if you're an independent retailer in any market, whether it is craft industry, pet stores, or anything else that we have mentioned, but are truly independent, not part of a larger chain, you're just going to have to talk to Gwen for those questions because I can't help you. Best way to talk to Gwen is to get on her calendar. Go to everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity. That will be booking a clarity call. That seems appropriate to the topic at hand, right? You want some clarity on what we've discussed. Gwen would be the best person to give that to you. So again, it's everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity. Now, if this episode has been helpful to you, I personally would be really, really happy if you would share it with somebody, subscribe, and leave us a review. Because reviews are what get this show shown to more people. And again, there's like a lot of, I wouldn't say necessarily bad advice, but as we said before, valid but not useful advice for independent retailers. And we will see you next time. The next part of our series is going to be talking about payroll and why it feels so expensive. So we'll see you then.
Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.